Our keynote speaker for today has never served in the military. He hasn't been elected to office, and he's never been appointed to public office. His name is Jim Erickson, and the only credentials he holds that allow him to stand up and speak today are that he grew up in Jasper, his dad served in Korea, and he can write a sentence or two that might make you think. Jim graduated from Jasper High School in 1983. He has spent the majority of his career in television, broadcasting, marketing, and advertising. He currently serves as Foundation Director for Bethany Lutheran Home in Sioux Falls and Brandon, and is inching his way through seminary studies at the Institute of Lutheran Theology in Brookings. Jim has served as a lay pastor right here at Jasper ELC, as well as several other area churches over the last 3 years. He loves his hometown, he considers himself a patriot, and he has tremendous respect for all who have served and or currently serving in the United States Armed Forces. We welcome our keynote speaker, Jim Erickson.
I wrote that introduction. No, that's hardly heard applause. As Bev said, I have never served in the military. The closest I ever came to wearing a military uniform was finding my dad's army jacket in the basement when I was a little boy. The closest I ever came to entering the military was when I registered for the draft when I was 18 years old. That's it. But here I am, on this most sacred of U.S. military observances, to speak to you about our fallen servicemen and women of the United States Armed Forces. There will be statements and speeches delivered this morning throughout our land. Some will be very stirring. Some will be difficult to hear, maybe because the stories are too heart-wrenching, or maybe because the voice of the speaker is full of years and weakened by age. This message this morning is being presented in a house of God. We meet here because on this Memorial Day, this church is being used as a gathering place more than it is a place of worship. But it reminds me that war is a part of our long human history. It is certainly part of our Judeo-Christian history. The Old Testament is fraught with stories of war and conquest. The first bloody conflict in human history was very one-sided. In fact, there is no record of any defensive action being taken at all. Cain invited Abel to join him in a field. Cain returned from that field. Abel did not. Cain killed his brother. Abel's blood was soaked up by the soil, as Scripture tells us. He died because Cain was full of envy. Envy and jealousy led to hate, and hate led to death. Cain killed Abel because he was jealous that God preferred Abel's offering over his. It's kind of a pretty petty offense. Then God told Cain, "Your brother's blood cries out to me." God is saying, his blood still speaks, even though he is dead. Abel was innocent, yet he died. But we still remember him. At least we remember his story, because someone died who shouldn't have. And doggone it, we like a tale of justice in this land of the free. But we don't always get one. Cain lived many years. He was given a wife and had many children. Abel died with no fleshly legacy whatsoever. He is remembered only by his spilled blood, which still, to this day, cries out to God. The contrast of Cain and Abel's lives makes my heart break for those who fought and fell and never experienced the long life they may have expected. They fought and fell for me. They fought and fell for you. And they fought and fell for the strength, security, and morality of this nation. Our Declaration of Independence says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Not everyone who served was able to experience those certain unalienable rights. But serving for the good of God and country has never meant justice would be served perfectly. Justice is reserved for God. So how do we reconcile knowing brave soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines had to die for freedom for which they would never fully benefit? May I make some suggestions? Perhaps these are some ways that you and I can both say thank you to them. Let's recognize the freedom we've been given that they fought and died for. Freedom of religion. We are sitting in a church. We are free to worship whom we want in almost any way we want. And we also have the freedom not to. Freedom of speech. We can say what we want, for better or worse. We have the freedom to share our point of view, just as I am doing today. Thank you, blood of the fallen, that keeps speaking to us today. We have the right to keep and bear arms and to use those arms for traditionally lawful purposes and to maintain a well-regulated militia. I pray we will never need another civilian militia. Several of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, our Bill of Rights that men and women have fought and died for, have to do with our judicial system. It's interesting how freedom is intricately woven in with the law. We have freedom from unreasonable search and seizures. No one can rifle through your belongings, or you for that matter, without reason. We have the right to due process of law. That's why God made lawyers, and that's why God turned some of them into judges. We have the right to representation. We are given the right to a speedy and public trial. A glance at our courtroom schedules seems to mandate some speed is necessary. We have no shortage of defendants in this nation, and we can't be tried in a secret court of law. And no one can impose excessive bail, and more importantly, no one can impose cruel and unusual punishment. A spin or two has been made on every one of these laws. Man is always seeking a loophole, a way out of a corner. And my last point isn't a right, but it is a privilege. We have the privilege to vote. We elect our leaders. As flawed as the process may or may not be, we still cast ballots in our country. And now just a few words about a soldier that I've been reading about lately. He fought in a war we rarely talk about anymore. He went willingly, even though he was too short, had bad eyes, and he was a bit too old for warfare at the age of 33. And he was responsible for his family farm. Yet, because of his National Guard experience and his passion to serve his country, he went to France to defend that nation and much of Europe against the erratic behavior of Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II. Harry S. Truman rose to the rank of captain in World War I due to his leadership skills with the previously undisciplined Battery D. After one camp-destroying escapade by his men in an attempt to rid themselves of their fourth commanding officer, Captain Truman posted a list of sergeants and corporals he had demoted to privates overnight. While he may not have been liked at first, his men quickly began to trust and respect their leader. When President Truman was inaugurated some 30 years later, the surviving members of Battery D, those same men, walked in single file on each side of the new president's limousine. Those who remained in 1972 attended his funeral. And the last 6 showed up for his wife Bess's funeral in 1982. That is a strong brotherhood. Truman is most remembered by history for his monumentally difficult decision to end the war with Japan in August of 1945. He did so by ordering that 2 nuclear bombs, 2 A-bombs, be dropped on that country, one on Hiroshima and the other on Nagasaki. Harry S. Truman made many of the decisions that thrust him into action himself. He enlisted. He led others. He survived, but he would credit wisdom and the providence of God for that one. He returned home, was married, and had a child. And he was a significant part of American politics for the next 30 years. He was our 33rd president. The men and women we salute today did not return home. Why does one come home and another not? I have no extraordinary wisdom to answer that question other than we have to trust the providence of God. So we remember. We remember because the blood they shed still speaks. Their blood speaks of service, of freedom, of devotion to one's country. Their blood speaks of family, brotherhood, and sacrifice. Today, I ask you not to limit your remembrance to any certain war. I ask you to let the blood speak from the very beginning of this, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. The blood of 1776, the blood of 1812, of 1863, the blood of 1917, 1944, and 1952, the blood of 1968, the blood of 1991, and every year when one of ours fell doing what he or she was called to do. And here we are, Memorial Day 2022, and we aren't waging war against any other nation right now. Yet, men and women of our U.S. military are serving in harm's way all over this beautiful earth. Technically and politically, we are at war against an ideology, terror. Terror doesn't wear a uniform. It doesn't identify itself with name, rank, and serial number. And it seems we are waging that war more often on our own soil than on foreign soil. How will we ever claim victory over that foe? We won't. As in all other wars this nation has engaged in, either for our own freedom or for the freedom of others, our only real hope lies in that eternal victory which was won by God through Jesus Christ. Isaiah 2:4 says, "He will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up the sword against a nation, nor will they train for war anymore." We have this promise for our nation. We have this promise for this world upon the return of Jesus Christ. Until then, our nation's leaders will send members of our military to fight. Some will return, some will not. And when those who do come home, when they land on American soil, we must celebrate whether there is a clear victory or not, because they obeyed orders and they served. And for those who fought and fell, as did hundreds of thousands before them, we must pause with gratitude for the life they gave for us. God, shed thy grace on thee. Let us applaud our fallen heroes this morning.